Welcome back to Embrace the Squiggle, the podcast where we get honest about what it really means to build a life that fits. So I'm Colleen, and today I am solo. Ashley, unfortunately, has the flu today, but I get the privilege of talking to someone who's reached the top, not once, but 3 different times in transportation, as an elected public office, and in national media. And yet he still had the courage to keep asking, is this actually aligned, right? Is this what I need and want? So our guest today is Paul Comfort. And Paul and I met at Podfest this year. We had lunch together and instantly hit it off and thought, oh, he'd be so great to have on our podcast. Even better is he has a new book coming out called Find Your X Factor, where he's on a mission to help high performers escape careers that look impressive on paper, but feel draining in real life. So if you've ever felt successful, but strangely unfulfilled, right? If the Sunday scaries and the Monday dread has started to creep in, this conversation is really going to hit home. So let's get into it. Welcome, Paul. So happy to have you today.
Thanks, Colleen. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So I remember when I sat down and we had lunch that day and you started talking about your career, and I thought, what a fascinating career that you've had. You've done some really interesting things. So give us the 20,000 foot view of your career and what you've done.
Sure. Well, so I grew up here in Maryland, where I live now, and I got very interested in politics for some reason. My parents and I, when I was like 10 or 11, were driving to Florida to go to Disney World, and we watched one of the political conventions, on TV, and it just attracted me, and it kind of, I think it connected and linked up with who I was on the inside in a real way. Since then I've always been involved in politics, all the way up until just yesterday when I finally made a decision to not run for a county commissioner in my county because the guy that has the job is a friend of mine and we talked it out. But so it was that connecting with people, making a difference in my world, being able to speak in public, all of that I loved. 9 out of 10 people are deathly afraid of public speaking, but I just, for some reason, am drawn to it. Maybe it's because my dad was a minister, and he preached, and I got to see him and all that jazz. But anyway, so that started an interest in the media and in politics. So I got involved in radio. I became a DJ at a local radio station, started a talk show called Comfort's Corner, had that for 16 years, a part-time job on local radio, and ran for office when I was 21. I
Wow.
lost for commissioner, but won for Democratic Central Committee at the time in my home county. But another guy, I got a chapter in my book called I Met a Guy, and it's the story of my career. Now, every job I've gotten is literally because I met a guy. He said, Paul, you're a great young man. When you graduate from college, I've got a new transportation director program in our Office of Aging, which serve the elderly in our community. We have enough vans now taking people to the doctor and all that stuff and senior centers that we could use somebody to coordinate it. I've only got a 1-year grant, but I'm sure I can get it the second year. Would you like to take your first job out of college? So, Colleen, here I am over 30 years later in that industry. But there's been a lot of squiggles along the way to talk about the title of your podcast. So I've been in and out of the public sector, private sector, took a 6-year break to go into county management, where I became CEO of 2 county governments here in Maryland. And then after finishing 30 years in the transportation industry, retired as CEO of the MTA in Baltimore, and then decided to totally pursue my passion, which is the part of my job that I always loved, which was the media side. When I was at the MTA, I started a radio station. When I was at the county commissioner job, county administrator, I started 2 local cable access television stations. So that's always been my interest. And so I started a podcast. Now we have a TV show. I do live events all over the country and this is my 7th book. And several of them have gone to #1 on Amazon. So it's this public communication side that really has it hit the spot for me.
So fascinating. And, I love how you talk about passion. And as a career coach, I've been career coaching for way too long now. And sometimes I feel when people say, go follow your passion, people get really stuck very quickly.
Yeah.
Usually the answer is always, I don't even know what I'm passionate about. Or, right, I'm passionate about making cupcakes and I have no desire to bake cupcakes 24/7 to make enough money to live. And so the follow your passion advice has always been, I've had a love hate relationship with it for giving it as advice out there. And
Yeah.
you've managed to build a career that you enjoy and you love and still have almost like side gigs too that build your passion.
That's right. I think probably why you felt like you had a love-hate relationship with that follow your passion advice that all our graduates get in high school and college a lot of times is because what I found, and you probably have too, is that it's only one part of the equation.
Yes.
So follow your passion. This is what energizes you. This is the core of your hobbies, your interests, things you would do for free, things that you love to do on the weekend, all that stuff, or the side gigs that you mentioned. So that's one axis. The other axis, the other side of the equation to find your X factor, right, is what you're good at, what you have natural skills and inclinations, not inclination, skills for. And you don't have to be perfect at it, but you have to be good enough, So I'll give you an example. When I was younger in college, I had a band, a music band, and we did all right. We toured, we made a record, we had fun. Um, but I had a good friend named Don who wanted to sing. We had a lot of people in the band, we had backup singers and all that stuff. And he wanted, Paul, I really want to sing, but this was his voice. I mean, it was awful,
That would be
And
me.
he even used to move his hand up when he would do the scale for me. And I said, Don, trying to be nicer, he's my buddy. Why don't you try to pick up guitar if you're interested in music? Or maybe you could be a sound man, or we had a lights guy. You could fill in for our lights guy. And no, he really wanted to sing. The problem was, Colleen, is that had he followed that passion, he'd end up living in a trailer in Nashville, outside of town, trying to get gigs. It's a much too competitive industry for somebody who sounds worse than Bob Dylan to make it. And so that's the problem with that advice is that unless you marry it with your skills, you're going to find yourself unsuccessful most likely. So that's the whole uh, theme of the book and been the theme of my life, which is to follow what I believe is your personal treasure map to purpose. So the book in and I've been speaking about this for 20 years. I've been a college graduate speaker, high school. I always teach this same principle. I just decided to put it in a book. Um, you don't have to reboot your life. Like you said, the Monday morning scaries, or Sunday morning scaries and Monday morning blues or whatever. It's really about uncovering what is inside of you. Like you said, some people can't figure out. This book walks you through how to kind of break that down and analyze those two lines so you can meet in the middle. And it really is like a treasure map. It's already there. You can go back in your life like I did and say, what have I really loved about all my jobs? I remember one time I ran a call center for Washington Metro. It was where people would call in to have disabilities. It's called ADA Paratransit Metro Access. And I was in charge of it. And but you know what I loved the most? I didn't love managing the call center, 170 reservation schedulers and dispatchers. What I loved was what I volunteered to do, which is to train the new employees, do their new employee orientation. I love standing up in front of them and talking about what we're doing here and answering their questions. And so as I analyzed what I was really enjoyed about all my jobs, and even when I was CEO of the MTA, it's $1 billion budget, I had 5,000 employees and contractors. It's one of the top 12 transit systems in America. It was the penultimate, of my 30-year career. But what I really loved about it was the media side. We started an FM radio station. We invested in our television program. We had a program called Commuter Connections, and all of these things are what I love. So that's what you have to do. You have to kind of go through and do an analysis.
Right, such a golden nugget for all of our listeners to hear. It's going through, and I always tell folks, sometimes it's the thing that you did for 1 hour a week. That's the thing that lights you up, that gets you excited. And
Yeah,
trying to figure out, how do you build your career to do more of that? Right? How do you add more and more to that thing that you really, that energizes you, that you love, that you have the passion for? The other piece that I will say as a career coach, I add into folks is to say, what's also going to fit with this phase of your life? I think,
I love that.
particularly as a mom, and this goes for a lot of people, but as a mom, I look back on my career and think the career I needed when my kid was in daycare was different than the career I needed when she was in elementary school, because daycare hours were like, yeah, we open at 7, we close at 5:30, pick up, drop off, you have windows. When she got to elementary school, drop off was 8:15 to 8:30 and pickup was at 4 o'clock. And if you were there at 4:05, your kid was the one sitting by themselves in the classroom. And,
Yes.
that 5 minutes is devastating for your child for some reason. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always thought, gosh, what I needed when she was in preschool and what I needed when she went to elementary school was so different. And I didn't expect that. I didn't realize that piece. And then I think now my kids are graduating college this year. The last 4 years has been about bring all the money, right? I want to make all the money because I have two kids at private schools, and we're trying to,
Right?
get them out without loans, which we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness. But it was one of those pieces of, the money was more important for the first time ever in my life, that I thought, okay, I've taken on some projects over the last 4 years that, yeah, they might not have been my absolute favorite, but they paid well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I learned some of that actually in a book, "Build the Life You Want" by Arthur Brooks. I'm not sure you heard of that book, but
yes.
it's really good about the second half of your life and how you can shift from, so to what it meant to me was, I did 30 years of hard work running transit systems across the Mid-Atlantic area and helping set up transit systems across the country. And I worked for private contractors. And then you reach this second half of your career, and it's really maybe time to shift into the mode where you're imparting wisdom, the classic role that we see for grandparents in our families. This is what I learned, Sonny.
Right.
And sometimes you don't like hearing that stuff, but it really is an opportunity for you to share what you've learned. And you may find more fulfillment in this latter part of your career because you don't have all the stresses. Colleen, when I interview, so my podcast is called Transit Unplugged, and it's really a niche podcast. It's for people that work in the public transit industry. So I interview CEOs of transit systems. So I've had this next week will be our 400th episode of the podcast. So we're in
Congratulations. As someone who's
rarefied
in the
air.
100s, I
Yeah.
know how hard it is to,
Yeah.
you know,
So, but over that time, I've obviously talked to 400 different, senior leaders, and 2 out of 3 times when I talk to them, and we get to know each other, they're like, "Paul, you've got the best job in the industry. You don't have that day to day grind." Well, it's just what you said. There's a different phase, a different time for our career, right? And so that's really what the X Factor book talks about too. And at the end of today, I'm going to give a free gift to all of your listeners, a way that there's a tool that I have that I'll offer them free online where they can actually do their own assessment and figure out just what we've been talking about. How do I figure out what are my interests? What are my abilities? How do I find the intersection? The other thing about it really is at this point, I think also, like you said, based on the phases of your life, is you do have different needs at different times of your life. You go through a period where, you're starting a family, you may want to have more time at home, right?
yeah,
With your kids. As you get older and you pass that 50 mark, like I am now, and your kids are grown up, you may say, you know what, I can do more time on the road. I can do more things differently. And so that's what I do now. I travel 3 out of 4 weeks filming our TV show, Transit Unplugged TV. I leave on Monday to head to St. Petersburg, where I'll be the first week of March, filming an episode of our TV show in that part of Florida. And then 2 weeks after that, I'll be in San Antonio filming. Our show's getting 1 million views per episode on YouTube now. And so I'm loving this part of my career, but I don't have to actually run a transit system. So it is time to reevaluate and to analyze where you're at in your life. And that's really part of the whole point of finding your X factor at that point. It's like Maslow said, we have a hierarchy of needs and we
yes.
all want to be self-actualized. That's really what this book is about at any given point in your life, how to find where you can be self-actualized. You can meet all your needs and then get to the point where you feel like, like they used to say, I'm hitting on all 8 cylinders. I wake up on Monday morning, I'm excited about what I've got going on today. The projects I have most of them are fun. But I would like to, if you're cool with it at some point, to get into how you can do all that and find fulfillment in your job without having to kind of start over and quit your job and go somewhere else. Because that's tough to do sometimes.
It is tough to do. And I know lots of folks that I coach are in places, right? It might be a big enough company where you have that ability to
Yeah,
squiggle within the company. Other times it may be you have to leave and do something different. But I do think folks, they they worry that they have to start at the bottom. Yeah,
that's
somebody
right.
I'm working with right now, she's making close to 400,000 a year. And so we talk about what she wants to do next. And she said, gosh, am I going to have to make $70,000 again? I'm at the pinnacle of my career. Do I have to go all the way back there? And it was like, absolutely not. You have skills that can transfer and go over to something different. But again, if you want to do something that makes $70,000 a year and that fits in your lifestyle at this point, fantastic. Like if you're okay with that. And it was an interesting moment for her to reflect on and say, gosh, financially, we're actually have plenty of money to live for the rest of our life, and I could go back to making 70,000, but was it an ego hit? Right? Was there the
Oh, yeah.
ego hit of,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know that I could do that again. And I said, you just have to think about what's important at this next phase to you. And once you
Yeah.
figure out, right, what do you value, what's really important, then it's easier to start to make those decisions and to not have the dollar that you would make, right? The salary piece be the be all end all. Because I tell folks all the time, right? Would you ever work for a really shitty boss for no matter how much money, right? There's not enough money in the world for me to work for.
Yeah.
Uh, there's a few people that I can think of that I would never, ever, ever work for, right? And
Right.
if there's not enough money, it doesn't matter how much they offered me, it wouldn't be worth it. And getting folks to get on board with that and to think about what's really important, because that makes that squiggle and that change and how do you figure out what's next so much easier.
I had a job, Colleen, one time that I hated. I had a boss that I hated. I had a secondary boss for a client that I despised, and they were awful people. And I ended up writing an essay for myself. What did I learn after I was able to get out of that job? And I wrote an essay to myself for myself, kind of like memo to file. And then I turned that into a chapter that I could not get sued over for the book. And it's called When You Hate Your Job. And it's 5 reasons why I hated the job and 5 things I learned from it and how it actually prepared me very well for what came next in my career when I reflect back on it. And so we all go through those chapters of our life, like you said. And I'd always told myself, I'll never stay anywhere just for the money. But I did. And it's a lesson I learned not to do it. This was maybe, 20 years ago, but I learned that lesson that it's not worth it, but you can glean things from it, right? So I think sometimes our life is like a Rubik's Cube and it gets messed up. And then we spend the next 5 years trying to line it back up again. And that is what life is, right? Life is largely about trying to align yourself with your true inner core. And it does start, as you said, with, you know, unplugging for a while. Maybe you need to unplug this weekend and say, I'm not going to doom scroll on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, your favorite time waster. The reason you are doing that most likely is because you have an empty spot inside your soul and you're trying to fill it or numb it, either through substances or through mindless entertainment. You don't want to feel that way. You want to feel aligned. I think you get back to the core of what we're talking about. You have a purpose in your life. Everyone is hardwired with interests and abilities. And I believe it sets our destiny if we'll allow it to. And it's not all like born in us. Some of it's environmental. We learn it along the way, the nature nurture, discussion. But you are who you are. And especially after a certain age, you're probably not going to change that much. Generally, who you are, what your core interests are and abilities. And so, anyway, I think it takes time to sit down and analyze that. And there are tools available, and I'm going to offer one at the end of your show that's free of charge with no expectations, where you can do an analysis of these interests and abilities and figure out what is important to you. And then that'll help guide your steps going forward. And then you can weigh it, right? There's a weighted average of, how much is this important? So if you hate your job and 70% of job satisfaction is shown to be your relationship with your boss, right? Like you
Right?
mentioned,
The people.
um, if you hate it, you hate everything you're doing. There's no opportunities for advancement or to try the other things that you really would want to do. Well, then maybe it is time to start looking. But you don't want to jump out of the frying pan into the fire either. You want to be
Yes.
wise about it. But on the other hand, if there is an opportunity at your current job to, like I did when I was running that call center, volunteer for another function, which is more in line with what you like to do, then that's an opportunity to figure out what is that? What can make me feel more fulfilled at work? Well, I'll always look forward to Thursdays because Thursdays is orientation day and that's the day I get to teach the class. So at least there's some hope. You're liking something there. And then if you shine in that, which I did there in that place, then the bosses may be like, she's doing an amazing job there in this thing she volunteered for. Maybe we should give her more opportunities in that line, in that sort of work. When I was CEO of the MTA, I was in a position to do that for people. And I remember I hired a young woman who was fantastic. And I told her, look, when you come into a transit agency, you can work in HR, IT, finance, procurement, legal, PR. There's 100 different things outside of just running a transit system. The day-to-day operations, drivers and dispatchers and mechanics, those kind of things. You stay here for a few months and figure out what you want to do. You're an amazing person. You've got amazing skills. You pick which job you want. Oh, and if you don't find any you like, we'll create a job for you, which is exactly what I did. And she was fantastic. She ended up, being a big contributor to a brand new bus route. We did a whole new alignment of buses in Baltimore called Baltimore Link, and we redid all the routes that have been in place for 50 years. And she ended up being drawn to that kind of analysis. And also, she was really good at making presentations. We did 200 public meetings with the public in Baltimore City to tell them about the new routes and to gather their feedback and why they hated it and why they might love this, whatever. So I let her find what she was interested in. And I think if you are in a position like that, like you said, maybe there's other opportunities there within the organization. That's a way to do it without blowing up your life.
I love that. I'm a big proponent of the Gallup Clifton Strengths Assessment and the
Oh
whole
yeah,
kind of the strengths-based management and that whole piece, and this whole idea of getting people to do more of what they do well. Right? Think about what are the things that you do best and how do you get to spend more time doing those and less times doing the things that are a big struggle for you.
that's
And
right.
yeah, every once in a while, I get the high achievers and the high performers of the world who will say, "Oh no, right? Like everything, the everything has to be an A, right? Everyone has to have an A plus in everything." And I say, one, it's just not possible. None of us are going to be great at everything. And if you start spending all your time focused on the thing you're not good at, then you're not spending time on the things you are good at. What if all of a sudden one day someone said to you, "No, Paul, like you don't get to do orientation anymore, but now you have to spend all of your time, I don't know,
Data entry.
data entry, filling
Yeah,
out
I would.
time cards, payroll. You have to
Yes.
do payroll all day, every day, right? How long would you last in that job? It
Yeah,
would be like
I'd be looking
minutes,
immediately to go
right?
somewhere else. Yeah, yeah.
Those are the calls I get when people have those things happen. They're like, "Hey, help me write my resume quickly. I need to get out."
Right. It's
So,
those non-negotiables, right? So, but I
yes,
think if you don't want to end up back where you were, like a lot of us fell into our career, right? Like I
right.
fell into transportation. I didn't seek it out. A guy called me and I said, "Well, I want to be in local government." That's why I ran for county commissioner. This is a job in local government. He even offered me, Colleen, he said, "Which one would you rather do?" I have two jobs open. One is the senior center director, where you would run the three senior centers and set up the, it's called a nutrition director because I would set up the
Yep.
menus for the lunch each day, or the transportation job. Transportation job is brand new. This other job. Which one do you want? I said, I don't know, Irving. Which one do you think I should take? He said, do the new one. You can make your mark in it. It's so it's literally, the flip of the coin is how I ended up in this career. And here I am now, well over 30 years later, and still in it. So if you fall into your career and you find out, that you're going through a midlife crisis, right? Where you're like, this isn't what I wanted to do. Well, the answer is not to go run headlong into something else until, like you and I have been talking about this whole conversation, you do some self analysis. You got to sit down and figure out, okay, what is going to make me happy? And at that point, you're probably in your early 40s. You've got enough experience where you know what you're good at and what you're interested in. You just need to take a weekend and figure it out. It's not that hard. You can write it down, even if you're not a deductive person. I'm not deductive, I'm inductive. I'm always pulling things together and trying to figure out trends and streams of thought. My wife is the deductive one. She breaks it all apart. It's God's cruel joke. We're attracted to our opposite, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but and then the rest of your life, you're hopefully making each other better people, more well-rounded. So, but I would say you got to take that time, and you need a tool, a couple tools. One you mentioned, the Clifton's. There's all kinds of tools out there,
Yes.
and books and all kinds of things about it. But in the final analysis, you want to figure out what makes you happy, what brings you joy, and what you're good at. And if you can find where those two intersect, then you will succeed because you'll be good at it and you enjoy it. You'll be like the guy who invented the light bulb. Remember him? Thomas
Yeah.
Edison. And he has a great famous quote. He said, I feel like I never went to work a day in my life because I love what I do. He also was good at it, right? He
Yes.
wasn't just a guy who, he has, I don't know, 1,000 patents or something like that to his name. So he was an inventor and he had to try 1,000 times to get the light bulb right. So it wasn't right on the first time, but he loved exploring and doing all that. And he also had the abilities to think mechanically and engineering wise. That's the kind of things you're looking for on your skill set sides. It's not what your mom says you're good at, right? Your mom thinks you're good at everything. Like Jerry Seinfeld's mother, who could not like my boy? He's good at everything on the Seinfeld show. And but
Or
what you
I also,
want is you
I
you want
for
to
me
analyze.
growing up, yeah. For me
Yeah,
growing up, I was the weird math whiz as a child. I was the kid who
yeah.
won the
But you
math
were probably
bee in third
recognized for
grade.
it, right?
Totally recognized for it. Everyone loved it, except you know what? I didn't enjoy it. It was boring to
There
me.
you
I
go.
I could do it in my sleep, and to this day, I mean, I'm 55, and my mother still says to me regularly, "Do you think you might ever switch careers to being an engineer or an accountant?" It's like,
Yeah,
no. right? Yes, I'm good at numbers. I still can see patterns really quickly, but now my ability to see patterns is what helps people figure out what they want to do next. It makes me a great
I
coach because
love
I could
that.
see patterns. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be that I could do crazy math in my head, right?
Yes. That's a perfect illustration, Colleen, that as you so you had an objective skill set, but as you boiled it down, what you're really good at, right, is analysis and figuring and getting out trends and themes. Just like me, you're inductive probably,
Yep.
and so then you were able to use that skill set to do something you enjoyed. You don't want to be like these kids who are, polymaths, like you mentioned, or maybe somebody whose dad made them go out and play tennis every day because he's living his life through his daughter, and I want you to become the great tennis player I never could be. And then when she's 18, she's like, Dad, I hate tennis. I know I'm good at it. I know I won junior championships and all, but I hate it. And so that's, that you have to do that analysis like we talked about. So really finding self-actualization is doing just what you've done, which is figuring out what those skills are, but boiling them down to their core essence and then matching them up with what you love to do, what you're interested in, and then circling where they intersect. And as you go through the treasure map of your soul, that's the X marks the treasure.
Yes.
That's where you dig. You
Yes.
dig there and you find the treasure. And you know what? Like the good book says, you sell everything you have to buy that field so you can find that treasure that'll make your life. You wake up every day, you feel like I'm living on purpose. I'm
Yes.
living my best life. So I'm not saying sell all your worldly goods. What I'm saying is put all your eggs in that basket and focus on that and make that your focus. And you will find the balance. Your inner self, your mind, your soul, your spirit, the universe, whatever you believe in, it's gonna start leaning you toward that direction. You don't have to throw it all out overnight, but it'll give you a compass point to say I'm living on purpose. I haven't found the full thing yet, but I'm moving in that direction, and every day I feel like I've got a mission.
Love
That's
that,
really the
Paul.
summation of it all. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so we could talk forever about this, but we can't because, you know, we don't need 3 hour
That's
long
we
podcasts.
just we just ended up on a high note. Let's end
Right.
it there,
We
right?
got it. So, all right, we're going to do some quick rapid fire questions for you. So,
Okay.
I will say I've changed these up for you, and I don't change them up that often, but I feel like with your
Ah,
background, I had some ones that I just need to know the answer to.
okay.
Okay, what's your favorite form of transportation? Like, what vehicle are
Yeah.
you getting into if you get the choice?
Train. I love trains. Yeah,
Nice.
we're going to ride the Rocky Mountaineer later this year on the media car. They got a new service. It's like an excursion train. It's the
Yeah.
coolest excursion train in America, I think. And it goes from Denver. They have a new route. Goes from Denver to Salt Lake City, which is my new favorite city in the country. The current television show that's on YouTube is the one I did there, and it's called Canyon Spirit. So we're going to ride that, and I'll tell you about it after.
Excellent. Okay, so of all of these places on Earth that you've been to, because you've had what 400 episodes, and you're looking at transportation systems everywhere,
Yes.
which has been your favorite transportation system
So here in
or
America,
interesting, I guess?
yeah. So there's a great transit system that people don't know a whole lot about in Tucson, Arizona,
Oh,
and they've got a light rail system that has engendered billions of dollars of what they call transit-oriented development along the route. It's an amazing town. I've got a TV show about it from Tucson. It was my favorite place to film a couple years ago. We were there, and they've got a really integrated, well-run transit system. But my favorite city in the world is Barcelona, Spain. And the experience we had there with their transit, and it's on the water, and it's temperate, and it's an amazing city. That's been my favorite place to visit so far in the world. Although uh, Melbourne, Australia, gives it a hard second place. So Melbourne is an amazing city too.
I will say, flipping through your YouTube, I just kept adding like more and more places that I need to visit on my,
Yeah.
to travel list. Okay, so now one of these three are more of our standard ones. So what are you bringing to the
Okay.
potluck? We invite you to the potluck. What are you showing up with, Paul?
Ah, So I wrote a cookbook a few years ago with
Of course
famous
you did.
recipes. Yeah, called Comfort Food. And it's got recipes from 30 of the world's top public transportation leaders, their favorite family recipes and pictures of them making it. The head of Chicago, Pace, has an Argentinian background. So she was doing something. She made it. Anyway, my favorite recipe was sweet potato fluff. And it was a lady named Lois Montaigne, who was 75 years old when she was driving for me. She was fantastic. At my very first job in Queen Anne's County, the one I mentioned, and she gave me the recipe, and my wife has made that for me over the years, 100 times, and it's amazing.
Love it. All right. What are you binging, streaming on TV these days?
So right now we're on The Pit on
Yes.
HBO. We're in the
Great
second
show.
season now, and I tell you, You shouldn't. For me, I watch it at night. It gets me all stirred up because it's it's like you're living in an emergency room and you're living that trauma. So it doesn't help you sleep, but it is a fascinating watch. I love it.
It is. Great, great
Yeah.
show. All right. And our last one, which I feel like this should be a softball for you, is, what's a book that you recommend? What's the book
Ah,
that you like to gift people? And what book, what book do you recommend people to read these days?
yeah. So actually, it's the Build the Life You Want book by Arthur Brooks. That's kind of my favorite self development book, personal development book over the last that I've read in the last 3 years. It was recommended to me by a good friend who is also a number one best-selling author, like New York Times kind of guy, Mark Ash, who wrote a couple books. But yeah, it's a fantastic book about people who are in the second half of their life.
Well, and I felt like this was a softball because I was expecting you to hold up your new book cover,
Oh
Paul.
yeah, I'll do
This is
that
your
too.
one. Your
There
favorite
we
book
go.
should be Find Your X Factor by Paul
That's right.
Comfort.
Yeah, well, it's not out yet. It actually comes out August 11th, but
Okay, so we got a little
you can
time.
pre-order it. Yeah, you can pre-order it now. And the gift I was going to give your listeners is now a good time to say it.
Sure, perfect.
All right, is a free assessment. So I've written an assessment to help you figure. I've gone through the book and taken out the key parts that are actually deductive and analytical, and put it on like a 2 or 3 page assessment. And it's up now. You can find it at findyourxfactor.ai. Findyourxfactor.ai, because AI is the new thing, right? So,
It is. It's
so that's
everywhere.
where that's the end of it. Instead of .com, it's .ai. And right as soon as you do it, you'll see click take your free assessment, and it walks you through how to do the analysis you and I spent the last 30 minutes talking about. And then, if you want, you can pre-order the book, which gives you a bunch of fun stories, even stories about the wild things that have happened in my life. Like I have a chapter on the power of visualization for your life and how my favorite movie, just 30-second anecdote, my favorite movie is Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and Andy McDowell. So Andy McDowell was my favorite actress for a long time. I'm
I
in
met her.
China. Oh,
I,
me too. That's what my story is. I'm in China 15 years ago, and I'm county administrator. I'm leading a delegation there because we have a sister city with Suzhou, China. We developed, and so we're in Shanghai to meet with the officials there and go to their business park and see all that. And in the morning, in the Marriott Hotel at breakfast, I look across. No, the day before, I read in the newspaper Andy McDowell's in town for the Shanghai Film Festival, and it just came to me. I'm going to meet her. Now I'm only there for 36 hours. The next morning at breakfast, I look up, there she is, 2 tables across from me. I'm like, holy moly. So I walk over, I got to tell her everything I wanted to tell her about, my favorite actress. I love the movie. She's telling me a little about her life and what she's doing there. And then her nanny came and was telling her about the baby. So I just backed off and went back to my chair. But those are the kind of stories that are in there. Some famous people. I've got 7 vignettes from people who reached the height of their careers, the America's number one hydroplane racer and hydroplane boat builder, Larry Lauterbach, and all those kind of stories in it. So you can kind of picture yourself in other people's shoes and see their stories and how they found their X factor and how it really propelled them to success. Really, it's a book about meaning, making your life mean something. And I think you don't have to look outside of yourself, Colleen. I think the meaning is already in you. You just have to uncover it.
I love it. Well, thank you, Paul, so much for being our guest today. We'll drop all those links in our show notes for folks, including your podcast and your YouTube channel, because even if you're not like a transportation buff, going to see the different locations you go to is amazing. They are some really fascinating videos. So thank you again so much for being our guest today, and we will talk to everybody soon. Is it time for you to add a little squiggle to your career? Join us every week to hear from another guest talk about how they embrace the squiggle.
Subscribe now and find your inspiration.